Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. There's quite a lot of people here, so thanks everyone for being here. So I'm going to start my session about developments in the open source community. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Guillaume Lesniak, as known as XpLoDWilD online. I'm the developer of the focal camera app. I've been also doing some device ports on CyanogenMod for some Samsung devices, for the Oppo Find 5, and some Asus tablets as well. So to get first started, let's talk about open source and Android in general. So there are three main concepts about open source. The first one being freedom. So unlike some devices with fruits on them, you can make your own decisions. So if you want to run a system, you can run whatever system you want. If you want to run a specific app, you can run whatever app you want. You don't need to unlock it or jailbreak it or anything to install your own apps. So that's kind of a major point of open source and Android. The second one is transparency. So the Android open source project is totally, well, open source, which means that you can go ahead and take a look at the source code, understand it. If you're interested into mobile development, you can really understand how the kernel interacts with hardware components, and it goes up to the system and so on. And the second great thing about transparency is that you have a total control over your private data. You know exactly what is transferred between your device and the internet, and so you don't have anything that's going to steal your data at a system level. And the third point is community. There are thousands of new developers every day that want to join in and make something cool, either with Android or with other big projects that are running open source code. So there's quite a few opportunities for these guys because they can join projects that have a really great established base, and at the same time they can also just easily enhance them. So you don't have to make something all from the ground up. You can just take something that is existing and make something great out of it. So these are the three main points. And also the major point about open source is that it's totally free. But while it's totally free, it doesn't mean that you can't make money out of open source code. So what about Android exactly within the open source world? So AOSP is fully open. So AOSP is the source code that is distributed by Google on android.googlesource.com. So you can get all the source code for free. You have almost everything for making Android run on an actual Nexus device, for example. Which means that you get a lot of forks of Android based on AOSP. So you have AOKP, you have Paranoid Android, CyanogenMod, Carbon ROM, Pack Slim ROM, and many different ROMs that are based on AOSP. However, OEM skins are not, which means that what you have, for example, on a Samsung device, the TouchWiz skin on Samsung device isn't open source, so you cannot get the source code for any of this, and it goes on for the same. It goes on the same for pretty much all the OEMs that are doing production devices. And unfortunately, some hardware code is not. What you have on AOSP repositories, you have like maybe 95% of what's actually all running on a device. So there's things like the radio interface layer, which might not be open source on some devices because of some trade secrets and so on. So what about Android ROMs exactly? Well, Android ROMs are all about enhancements. Taking AOSP and making cool features on top of them to make it more enjoyable by the end users. It's all about also reverse engineering. To make these devices work and to make actually all devices on the market work with actual source-based ROMs, we need to make sure that we kind of reverse engineering some of the parts of OEM's code because we don't have a source for all the models that are running on devices. So for example, Code Aurora Forum is a really great source for source code for Qualcomm devices. There's a lot of Snapdragon sources there. But some of the devices don't have any source code, and we are just forced to actually use pre-built models to make our ROMs work on these devices. So there's a whole bunch of reverse engineering work to make sure they can actually work on our build. And finally, Android ROMs are all about innovations. There's particularly some really cool things in paranoid Android that you might have heard of. For example, Halo, the replacement for notification system, and the PI controls to replace the navigation bar. So a quick example of the three major ROMs you have on currently around on the Android community. So you have AOKP, which is all about customization and theming, changing the way your Android device looks. You have CyanogenMod, which is about simple enhancements over AOSP, making sure that they stay close to the guidelines Google designed, and all about stability, making sure that it's well, stable. And the third major ROM is paranoid Android, which is all about making sure that your Android device looks differently. As I said, you have LO and PI controls to change the way, the really core features of Android work. And you have many things such as DPI changes to have kind of a tablet UI on the phone, but just for specific apps, for example. So now you might be going to ask, why are all of these teams doing this work separately? Why don't they unite together to get all the cool stuff at one place? So why cannot we have one ROM that is both clean and stable and customizable, innovative, that has its own guidelines but also following Google guidelines, that is also driven by the community, which has good community input, and that is fully open source? Well, there's really a thing, personally, it's my most sad thing in the Android community is that you have one team that is going to do its own work, and another team is going to do its own work, and within those teams there will be leaders and just small translators and small developers and just small people and big people, and this is the kind of thing that shouldn't exist actually in the Android community. And in my opinion, we are one big Android community. We are one big Android developer community. And to make the Android platform move forward over the course of the next few months and year, we should all work together. And that's where I'm going to announce the project I've been working on for past few months now, which is called Omni. So what is Omni? Well, Omni is a new kind of Android ROM. So don't get started on, oh no, not yet another ROM. We already have like thousands of them. We have really different ideas for that project. So first, Omni is all about community. So the community will have an input on every single level of the system. So first, community will have input on directions we should take. We're not going to take ourselves the decision to include one or one another feature or not. We're going to open up all our blueprints and mock-ups and feature ideas and concepts, prototypes of apps, so that actually we're not going to waste our time on making something that maybe might not work properly or that users might not like. So they can give an input really early on the features and projects we might want to have, and really making sure that we just do what people like. So then people will be able to vote up and down for a patch or a feature we might want to do. Instead of just having the leaders deciding, okay, I don't like this patch, I'm going to -2 and just make it disappear off the code review because I don't like it. Well, if there's a feature that users want, they should be able to get it. And so we'll let users vote for features or patches, so that even if we might not, even if the project leaders might not agree with one or another patch, people can still say, okay, you might not like it, but the major part of the community like it, so we'll make it. And big thing is that we're going to accept bug reports on nightlies. This is actually a really big thing. I know there's a lot of problems with getting bug reports on nightly because it might be bugs that are already known by the device maintainers and during the bring-ups. But we'll have a really greatly integrated bug report system, which means that you can actually take bug reports directly within the OS and send it directly to our Jira for checking bugs. So the second big point of Omni is that we are focusing on open source. So there are 4 major points on that side. So first, all the contributions that are made to Omni are made under the GPL license. So if someone wants to take your patch and do something commercially with it, they can go ahead and contact the author of the patch and say, okay, I want to use this for my project, but I'm going to sell it and maybe make changes to it. And if you want to do that, you can with the author directly. And if you want to make, if you want to involve money, it's your problem. But we're not going to, be responsible for kind of weird licensing stuff. The second big thing, and I think that it's really, really important, is that if we take something from another ROM or another project, we must enhance it. We're not going to just take patches and say, okay, let's copy this and put it there, and we're going to say it's okay. There's a lot of things that aren't perfect in the things that people add on Android. And the goal with this project is to make sure that we not only allow people to have what they want to have, but also make sure that we make it better than it is originally and contribute it back to the original project. So that if we're taking, for example, the PI controls on parented Android, we will make it, we will add enhancements on top of it and contribute it back to parented Android so that they can also, on their side, enhance it and make it even better. The fourth point is to make sure that we keep cohesive and stable for everyone. So it's kind of a big point for a few ROMs like AOKP. They have a lot of features, but all of these features have a different UI and a different way of using them. And so it's kind of hard sometimes when you first flash AOKP to really make sure that you understand how all the features they added work. And this is something that we're going to try to make more unified and more unified UI, but while at the same time not scrapping features. And finally, we're not going to only focus on the core Android OS. There's 2 things on that side. The first one is we are really committed to performance on Android. And recently, the Qt developers have released Qt 5.1. And with this framework, you can actually now release Qt apps on Android, which means that you can make your app on Qt all in native C++ code and run it directly on your Android device. Now, the only drawback of Qt on Android is that you don't have a native look of Android. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to make a library for developers to actually have Android native look with Qt so that you can make full C++ apps with really amazing performance running directly on your Android device. And there's a second thing, but I think I forgot about it. So who's the team behind Omni? So this is only part of the team, the major contributors to the team so far. There's many other people. So you have me, you have Entropy 512, which is Andrew Dodd. You have TDM Code, you have Destroy, Twarped developer right here. You have SPNF Joe, you have Chainfire, Tyrell 6991, Max Winiger, and many other people that are contributing. Some of them are here, and unfortunately I'm kind of... these guys are really talented developers, but it doesn't mean that we're only going to take really talented people within the team. We're really looking for all kind of people that really want to contribute on open source, and not only we'll have amazing resources for new developers to come in. We'll have a big wiki and big forums so that everyone can hop into the project and hop into Android in general without actually having knowledge about Android. We have guides about how to build Android. We have guides about how to add new settings to the setting apps, for example. And we even have a guide on how to port a device, a full guide on how to port a device to Omni or actually any other AOSP-based ROM. So what's inside Omni? What makes this ROM different than other existing ROMs? First, some of the key features. We have enhancements on the quick setting tiles. Just before I list everything, some of these features are actually working. Some of these features are work in progress. Some of these features are just concepts. But I'll get into that a little bit later. We've worked on a translucent UI, so I've seen KitKat recent leaks just a few days ago, and actually we're pretty close to what Google did in 4.4. We have improved the FaceBeam wallpaper, so this is probably the most important change ever we have. We are working on multi-users on phone, so this is kind of a tricky point, but we have a lot of ideas on that, and we'll be working towards bringing this to phones. We are working also on bringing a Roadrunner project. So this is something that kind of surfaced back in Android 4.2 era. So there were rumors about Google working on making sure that Android device would have a better battery life, and it was called Project Roadrunner. And we also have some great ideas on how to enhance battery life on Android, with ideas coming from Sony Stamina Mode or Qualcomm Battery Guru app. And we're looking forward to implement some of these things into the ROM so that you have better battery life on the ROM. It's not done. We have some enhancements on Daydream. We'll be adding DPI changes settings, something similar to what Paranoid Android does. We have implemented AOKP's performance control app, but we made a lot of changes to them. And we have a really small feature that probably nobody cares about, which is multi-window. This is something that has been requested a lot of Android. It caused a lot of discussions between Google and the development community. There were Cornerstone, there were a lot of different implementations of that. But we found a way to actually make it work properly without actually breaking anything. So one question you're going to ask is, when can we get our hands on that? So for things like multi-window, it's really complicated to do something like this, and I'm not sure if we're gonna see this before next year or not. Well, no, I'm just joking. Actually, it's already ready. I'm going to show you that right now on my device right here. So here's my Nexus 4 running a recent build of Omni. So as you can see, some of the first enhancements, we have a transparent status bar on top. We have translucent navigation bar. We have this really nice battery life level around the lock screen ring, which is looking pretty good. We have dash clock as our default clock app. This is really powerful. We support all the dash clock extensions, so it's really extendable. And so some of the key features, so first you have this beautiful FaceBeam wallpaper. As you can see, it's scrolling, so you have this nice 3D effect. And one of the major features of FaceBeam that we've added is changing FaceBeam color. So you can actually change the color to whatever you want. And it might not sound like it, but actually it's something that people have been requested like 1,000 times on forums and different IRC chats and so on. So we finally brought it to life. So some of the quick setting enhancements I've been talking about earlier, and so we can now swipe tiles, so you can get access to more information. So for example, if I turn on my Bluetooth, I can just swipe the tab and tap on the back of the tile to make my device discoverable by Bluetooth. I can just swipe it back and disable it. And the same goes for Wi-Fi. If I'm connected to Wi-Fi, I can just swipe, and instead of having Wi-Fi off written, you have your IP on your network. And tapping the back of the tile will bring you to the tethering settings. So I've been talking about multi-window, and I'm going to show you that right now. So for example, if I have my messaging in Hangouts app, I can just open them in split view just by going to the recent app settings or a recent app screen and tapping just at the split view, and I can use both apps at the same time and just use them naturally. It's working with many different apps and many different things, and also we've been, so as you can see, we have your take bug report tile. So also we have implemented active display, which is something coming from Chameleon OS, which basically allows you to have notifications similar to what they do on the Motorola X, the Moto X. So you have, when you get a notification, your screen will turn on and show a little circle with your recent notification. And you can tap on it and see the full notification and swipe to either way to dismiss the notification or open it. So as I said before, we have multi-users, so this is still a huge work in progress. Still a lot of work to do on that, but we can actually switch between profiles. We have adapted the app switcher thing, the user switching thing, sorry, to work actually on phones, because it's actually not possible to do it on phones out of AOSP. You don't have the layout to do it. And the other thing I was saying is that we implemented performance control from AOKP. So originally, the AOKP performance control app is a separate app. And what we've been doing here is that we converted it first to a fragment. So actually, it's running inside the settings app. So if I have maybe on a tablet here. So actually, if you have even on a tablet, you actually have the normal you actually have the sidebar, and just like any other setting. Well, except it's crashing on Andrew's tablet. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. So yeah, it's running as a fragment within the settings app, so it's really transparent. You don't have any. You don't need to exit the app. You don't need to give it root access or anything. It's just seamlessly integrated, and you have really tons of settings. We've been adding some description to some of the settings, and well, it works pretty great. Then we have a few other things here and there. For example, if you long press on the recent apps, you get you access your 2 recent apps. Well, and that's about it. So, some words about the development process. So first, we love Gerrit. One of the big points of this project is that we want to do code review on everything. We're not going to force push anything. We're not going to push a patch that nobody ever tested. So all the code submitted to Omni will be reviewed through Gerrit. We're not going to have any code that is just plus-tuned without any tests or pushed directly to our repositories. All patches must be approved by multiple people. So for now, since we are a really small team, we need at least 2 people testing the patch. But as we will hopefully grow up, we'll need more and more people to actually test the patch and making sure that that patch actually works properly. And so we're not going to do any force push, which means that the build will never be broken. This is something that happens a lot of some ROMs, that some patches are pushed and they're not tested on various devices. Sometimes they're only tested on phones and on tablets. Sometimes they're even only tested on one device. So by making sure that each patch is approved by multiple people, we make sure that the build is never broken and that you don't have any boot loop or something on a device that hasn't been tested. So a few words about the releasing and installing process. So we have a new concept for Omni, which is verified nightlies. So basically, verified nightlies are nightly builds, so regular nightly builds, that will be automatically tested on a bunch of devices. So we'll be running kind of an automated test on all the devices to make sure that while the device doesn't boot loop, well, nightly on a device doesn't boot loop, that you can turn on Wi-Fi, that you can turn on Bluetooth, that you can connect to different networks, that you can play video, just making sure that the build actually isn't broken or you don't have any regression in a build. And also we'll have on top of that, trusted users will be able to say, okay, this build is working totally fine, or this build has one or one another thing broken. And so that's for the release process. And installing, we have something called Omni Installer. So I think a lot of you heard about CM Installer recently. And we've been kind of trying to find a way to make everyone happy about that. And so we are releasing an open source all-in-one installer for all devices, but it's working on both Linux, Windows, and Mac OS X. So this app lets you basically unlock your phone, install recovery, flash a build, and everything totally automatically with only one click on an app. And the cool thing about this installer and what makes it different is that it is actually open to all the ROMs. So basically, when you open the app on your computer, you plug in your phone, and you select what ROM you want to install, you press install, and you just wait a few minutes, and there it is. Well, that's very easy we have an API actually, or something similar to an API, where basically any one of you who are making ROMs, or even if they are stock-based ROMs or just small changes on top of other ROMs, any one of you can just plug into the Omni installer and have your own build shown in the app. So how to get involved into Omni? So we'll have our code review instance. We have our Gerrit. We'll have a Jira for bug reporting integrated with our bug report system on device. We'll have our own website and wiki, with a lot of developer resources, as I said before. We have our forums on XDA, and we have IRC channels. And unlike current project, actually our development channel will be totally open to everyone. So even if you are not a developer and you want to you want to learn about what our developers are currently working on, you can just hook into our IRC channel and see what we are all up to. And all source code will be on GitHub really, really soon. Actually, we started pushing to GitHub our source code just a few hours ago, and it should be up soon. Our website will be up. I think it's maybe up right now, or will be up in a few minutes. Well, that's pretty much about it. One last thing is about device support. We are supporting all the Nexus devices, obviously. We are supporting the Oppo Find 5, Sony's devices, so the Xperia Z, the Tablet Z. We are supporting the Exynos 4, so the Galaxy S3. And we're actually supporting a pretty cool device that I have here, which is actually special because you might know that MediaTek is pretty, they try to keep the source as closed as possible. And we've been able, thanks to Oppo, to actually run Omni. I have it right here on my device. To run Omni on the R819, which is a MediaTek-based device. So it's actually running our system right here on the device. And well, that's about it. Thanks, and we have some time for questions and answers.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused by the solution to the, in essence, fragmentation problem, where you've got multiple ROMs, each of which has different focuses and different features that their user communities are interested in. Being able to just get these people to somehow agree on a set of features that somehow, I guess, a majority votes on matches, and that solves that problem. Just clear up some context here. So I'm the guy who runs to the iOS jailbroken devices, and so we've got a large community of people, and I don't think that half the stuff in Cydia most users would want. It's like each person would want like a small fraction of the stuff that's in Cydia, and some of it's they're bad ideas. Right? I mean, maybe that shouldn't have been something that anyone wants, but some people do. So I'm wondering, how, I'm going to use this, right? And then there's going to be something I want that AOKP has that you think is a bad idea, and the majority of your users vote it down. Okay, so don't get it.
Yeah. So the thing with Omni, that's two of the points I've a little bit talked about. So the fact that users can actually say, okay, we want a patch or another patch, is one of the things that to make sure that we have a kind of central point for all the other ROMs to actually take patches from and take enhancements from. The second thing is, since we're enhancing the patches we are taking from, we make sure that we actually move platform forward, and that we're not just taking bits here and there and actually making a cohesive platform, which means that even if you don't use all the things we might or might not have in the ROM, we'll have a clean UI, a clean way to turn on and off one or another setting or feature. Make sure that we are not actually adding bloat to the ROM, but just giving users choice to do things. Does it answer your question? Or?
I mean, it's definitely an answer to the question. I mean, I don't. This would turn into a long discussion. So
Yeah. Yes.
It seemed like a lot of the stuff that you demonstrated are apps that are actively available in the Play Store. Are you working with those developers specifically, or is this open source project that you take from active display? And as a secondary to that question, how do you plan to make active display not terrible?
Okay. So regarding existing apps, we've been actually reaching out to some community ROMs. So we've been reaching out to AOKP, to PX, and so on.
Sorry, I wasn't clear. I was specifically referring to the apps like Dash Clock and Active Notification.
Well, actually, our performance control is part of AOKP. It's pretty much tied into AOKP, so it's what I was referring to.
Dash
but
Clock is an openly available app made by a Google employee. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. Regarding that, we've been actually contacting these developers. I've been sending an email to Roman Ulrich to actually tell him, can we plug this into a ROM? And he was perfectly happy about it. And the same goes for performance control. They're really happy to actually have ROMs and systems using their apps because it helps into they're getting more feedback and getting more users and developers interested into these apps. So it's a good thing for both us and them.
So the developers are working with you to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then active display not being terrible.
So yeah, regarding active display, for now we only have the current implementation, but we are working to make sure that we reduce the battery consumption and making sure that it's enhancing the performance of it, because we have some performance issue with this. And well, at some point we can't really do much more than what it is actually, because currently the current way it works is that it turns on your screen for a few seconds, shows you a notification, and then turns back on after the timeout.
I'm really aware of how it works.
Okay.
super aware. So when Motorola developed that feature, the point was that it was available for AMOLED screens specifically because LCD behaves a lot differently, and you just got them announcing that it was going to be available for other LCD displays. So
yeah.
Is there an intended performance difference between those two types of devices that you guys are addressing, or is it just if you have an LCD device, you're going to have better phones if you use that display?
Well, obviously you will. It's it's a performance constraint. We cannot really make that better because LCD screens work this way. But just acting on the brightness level and reducing maybe the timeout or things like that, we can make it a little bit more less battery war on LCD devices.
Okay.
Yes.
So it sounds like with the users voting on the features, what happens if there's a feature developed by the community that the community really wants, but it really makes app developers mad. Where do you feel that your responsibility as like the project leader lies in making sure that you're a good citizen of the Android ecosystem?
I can't see actually a concrete case where an app developer wouldn't be happy about including something in it.
Like data flooding and data spoofing. We had patches that came into CM about 2 years ago. And it started off as like the permissions management system, and it evolved to aggressively lying to apps about sending random strings of characters instead of contacts. And a lot of app developers got really mad and said that they were going to they weren't going to support us anymore. And I had to make a decision that we can't include that anymore.
Okay, I see.
And a lot of people didn't get that, but it was all about being a good citizen of the Android ecosystem. Had we been, if there wasn't some leadership there and it was all user controlled, I don't know that that would have went over so.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tough question. The thing is, we will actually, both users are both just simple users of the system, and probably a lot of app developers will be in those users. So they'll be able to as well give some feedback on things like permission control. and we hopefully we'll be able to get into something that makes both parties happy about it. For example, putting it into an opt-out or opt-in rather than forcing it on every user. And it's regarding permission control and faking context and stuff. There's already a lot of exposed modules and a lot of different ways to actually do that outside of CM or outside of any other ROM. And there have never been any problem about this.
Sure, but it's an issue when you get to scale, right?
Yeah.
It's it's okay when you have a couple 100,000 users or even 1 million users, but whenever you start to get to scales beyond that, and the app developers are actually like wanting to use your stuff, that it becomes a much bigger issue.
Yeah. So well, I don't really have an answer for that actually.
So I'm trying to imagine how you're balancing code review and merit, technical merit versus user demand, which I think is where it starts.
That's one of the things I was interested in. I would have had like a massive flood of related questions as you get voting on patches. I was trying to focus on it.
Yeah, so which one would take precedence? Would a bad patch that it has a lot of community pull go in, or would it wait until?
We'll be really careful about code quality. So even if a feature of a patch is really interesting, we'll be making sure that the code is really clean and maintainable, and that it won't break anything, and make future merges easier. And that's some of the things we'll be looking at, and making sure that all the settings are properly made, and that we stay cohesive with the UI and UX within the whole system.
And what about like upstream board support code? Like Qualcomm writes like a metric shit ton of code, and like for CM, we're constantly merging stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're pretty careful to make sure we provide legacy support and for devices that are just about to come off. I mean, are you gonna like have user voting on that stuff too?
So for CAF patches, we have something a little bit different. So our CAF repositories will be we'll have two branches. So we have one stable branches, the current branch, which basically will have all the code that is needed to make current devices work. So basically, if we have a few Qualcomm devices, they will be running the stable branch. And once we have new CAF patches or a new device that needs new CAF patches, they will be on a branch and a next branch. And so we'll be only merging the next branch into the stable branch once we're sure that all devices are working properly with the new code. So we're making sure that when we merge new CAF patches, it won't break any existing device without making them upgrade first before merging the new stuff in. Yeah. Yes?
You said that your performance and stuff are open to pretty much new beginners. Would you say just go to the website and look for everything, or is there a specific place you should start?
We'll have it open for everyone, even beginners or advanced users.
Okay.
Yes.
What are your strategies there for maintaining building where you don't have these ROMs that cause problems? Being the automated tests, the build on multiple devices. Can you go into more detail on how you plan to accomplish that?
But the automated testing.
Yeah, after you do the build, and have automatically test the ROM to make sure it doesn't break anything from the previous release.
So we'll basically have a bunch of devices connected to one computer, or I'm not sure if we're going to do that totally automatically, or if we'll have someone just plugging in and out devices. But anyway, we'll basically have a big script, a big service running, which will basically push builds to devices, flashes them automatically, reboot, and actually we'll have an APK that will be running at boot, and that will run all sorts of tests on that device, and reporting that back to our hosting system.
Is this new development, or is this something that is this new development functionality for an APK that you plan on offering?
Yeah. So everything will be open source. Every single app, every single script we do will be open source. We can have the source code of everything. And so this is something that we're currently working on. It's not done yet, but it's something that will come really, really soon.
your vision seems to be that you want like the entire Android community contributing to a single ROM and driving a single thing. But like as we all know, you can't please 100% of users and 100% of developers 100% of the time. And I think, do you really think that's feasible to do that? I think that the fact that you can't do that is like proves that you're going to always have forks no matter what you do. Everyone's going to have their own itch that may not satisfy everyone.
So, yeah, our goal isn't to just kill every other ROM existing on the community. Actually, our main goal is to really push everyone forward. That's why we need to. That's why we want to enhance everyone's patches when we are taking them. So our goal is to when we take something, we enhance it and contribute it back, which means that not only we are gaining a new feature, but also the original project will be gaining more features, more stability, or whatever we might have enhanced. And so everyone, people who really like AOKP or really like PA, well, it's up to them. I mean, if they really like the ROM, they have a choice. We don't force them to use our ROM or anything, so they can just continue using it. And our project, through our enhancements, will also profit that other project. So indirectly, if you use AOKP, you will have enhancement that we've been doing throughout our project, also available in the original ROM.
One more question. Do you think free means free as in Libre or free as in Gradient?
Actually, both. So both full code will be open, and we won't charge for anything. I talked about security earlier. We'll have full open source and free security features, free. All the multi-window implementation, all the installer or Qt library, and everything will be open source and free, obviously. Yes?
So you were saying that you guys are going to be having to have two people approve a patch before it gets merged to make sure nothing's broken. How, it feels kind of unfeasible. It's so much to test a patch on every device, and every configuration. Do you guys have any kind of tools or anything like that to help with that process?
We might be working on something like that to help testing on multiple devices. We'll have some changes here and there to make testing on multiple devices more easier. Well, I don't have much more details for now, but we have a lot of documents about our future process, and we have discussions on these documents, and everyone will be able to also have a look at them and write their ideas to them. And we have a document about that, but I don't know where it's at. Yes.
To kind of follow up on that, are you going to have any kind of testing requirements for someone who's going to submit a patch, or coding standards?
So we're going to have coding guidelines, UI guidelines, UX guidelines. And we'll be making sure that we test it on multiple devices, and that making sure it works on multiple devices. And not only we are going to check the source code, but also, well, hopefully other people will make sure that the code follows the guidelines.
Hopefully?
Hopefully. Yes.
Maybe I missed it, but I didn't catch the website.
It's omnirom.org.
I'm sorry?
omnirom.org.
It currently is not up. It will be up soon. We're putting some finishing touches. So the source is getting pushed right now. So this, GitHub has something this large is slow.
Yes.
So you mentioned contributing back to projects like AOKP, and I think maybe I misunderstood. So in your talk, you had mentioned taking a feature from AOKP, the CPU management.
Preference control. Yeah.
But if all of your patches are in GPL, and AOKP isn't in GPL, how can you contribute anything back to AOKP?
So we've been looking a lot at that. So first, performance control is a GPL app, so that's really a problem. But for everything, it's in the framework. For things we'll be adding, new files or new packages, we'll be having as much as possible a GPL license. But for things that are in Apache license, we'll be forced to comply with Apache license. We'll be pushing GPL as much as possible, but there's some tricky cases where we cannot actually push GPL. So, yes.
Sounds like a big company process, keep all the users working in mesh. How are you
We have great support from xda-developers for all the backend stuff. So, yes.
I have a question about the multi-window implementation. How do you handle that? Is it going to be like on-screen reporting still?
No, so it's. I don't know if you can show that. So it's. So actually, we are just resizing the windows internally handled by the system. So basically, when you have one window, we're just actually opening the activity and resizing to whatever size is needed for being actually half of the screen. So actually, we have some limitations within the multi-window to actually making sure that it doesn't break anything. So you'll only have 2 windows open at the same time on the screen. So you won't have, like 10 windows at the same time. And well, other than that,
I guess my biggest question about that is it opt-in for applications? So if I was designing an app, do I opt into that process, or is my app supposed to support resizing again?
Well, we try as much as possible to make it so that apps think that they are in an environment where the layout is the most comfortable with. So it's not something that we have totally implemented yet. But for example, when you are in portrait, the app will think that it's actually in landscape, so that you'll have the landscape layout on a half portrait screen, so that you have a correct layout on both apps. And well, obviously not all apps will be working properly. Some of them are really designed to be used full screen, and so we'll probably have some problems with some of these apps. But for most apps, it's working pretty good.
Piggyback on that, how does that work for media apps? Because the media apps, mostly when you go to the landscape, you automatically trigger, like YouTube.
Actually, we are. The way it works internally is that we are actually moving the apps to the front, to the top of the activity task, and it's still a work in progress. As you can see here, we have to make them rely properly on landscape, and with multimedia apps, with media apps, some of them will need some changes. The gallery will need some changes to make sure that actually the video doesn't pause when you are tapping the over app. And we'll be looking at ways to make them think that they are still in front of the activity task, so that they still keep on playing.
So I suppose my question is, you control source of gallery, so you can incorporate that case that's necessary. But for Netflix,
well, that's what I was saying about the framework part, making the app think that it's still in the front, still running in full screen, but that is actually not. So it's still some of the things we're still working out with the current implementation. Yes?
What happens if you try to use the keyboard right now?
If it opens.
And also in the other view as well, landscape or portrait.
I'm not sure why my keyboard isn't open.
so is it supposed to shrink just to one side, or does it take the whole landscape keyboard?
So actually, in landscape, it will raise both windows to the normal level. In landscape, in portrait, we still have some issues with that. In that the keyboard will actually run over the lower app. So this is still something we're working on. Any other question?
So you're pushing the code up now, so nightlies are starting in 2 days? Or?
Nightlies will be starting soon. We will probably be giving out some builds on XDA or others. And yeah, nightlies will be starting in the coming days. Yes?
For the multi-window, so as soon as you push on, it just immediately goes home. And then once you hit the reset, you have to hold on to it to be able to get it into the multi-view, or
So
throw it up there half the screen, like I saw earlier.
So if you open again an app by just tapping on it, it will reopen in full screen. And if you go to an app by the launcher, it will still be in split view mode. Yes.
So you mentioned multi-user on phones.
Yeah.
So how do you plan to deal with the telephony problem?
So we've been discussing a lot about how to handle this. So we'll let user have a choice actually between either routing only calls on the main account and routing text only on the main account. So that if you're on your secondary account, you won't actually get calls and you won't get your messages. You'll get on them only if you get back to your main account. We've been also talking a lot about multi-SIM. If you have 2 SIM cards, routing one account to one user and another account to a second SIM. And also giving the user the choice to actually route calls to both accounts and only keep texts on one account, your main account. And there's a lot of possibilities, and we'll try to cover as much as possible through settings, basically. Yes?
Talk about security and the product evolving moving forward. Any thoughts on SEM?
Sorry?
SEM?
We're still discussing about that because it's currently causing a lot of troubles for apps on Android. Some apps require some special, So we're still discussing about how to handle that properly, but the security things we'll be more at the framework level, making sure that apps actually don't do things that they shouldn't do, or giving only specific permissions, similar to app ops and performance. Permission control and things like this. We'll be focusing on that and adding, for example, a really cool thing we are working on is having when you have a pin lock, actually having a second pin which will actually open a fake account, so that if your phone is getting sized and you still don't want to give your true pin code, you can give actually a fake pin code which will unlock a fake account, and so people won't be able to see what's actually in your phone. That's an example of some of the security things we're working on. Yes.
You talk about having a multi-user support, and information, whenever you go from one account to the other, it's idle. Whereas if you have another device with the same 2 accounts, somebody changes the password on one device, that account never comes active, they go to that other device to log in. Are there roaming?
No, multi-user is really device independent, so it's separated from your Google account and everything. So it's not gonna talk to each other. Yes.
One last multi-user thing. With the telephony issue, so one of the big problems that run into is that we all dislike carriers and everything, but there's a lot of carriers that you do the single sign-on process by rewriting HTTP packets as they go over the network that automatically authorize you for their services, that tends to be the big roadblock with multi-user on phones, because you might not want user number 2 to be able to get into your billing details without a password, there's stuff happening outside of the control of the device. Actually on the carrier's network. What do you plan to do about that?
We'll be filtering at frameworks level.
So you can't, because it happens with the carrier's network. When the packets are off the device.
I don't get how that's tied to multi-user.
Right. So if user A, since the device has a SIM, right? What happens is when the packets get off the network, the carrier might add a header to HTTP, right? And that's based on who you are and what SIM card you have. So when the packets get off the network, you're automatically authorized for the service because the carrier's equipment said, hey, he's authorized for the service. And then user B, who you might hand off your phone, your tablet, to your wife or your cousin or your daughter or your son, whatever. They can just go straight into your billing stuff without any password.
What carrier does that? Because AT&T, you have to specifically log in.
Yeah, I spent a year and a half
multi-user phones is probably like the closest to still in the design phase.
Yeah.
We know there's a lot of potential issues that really need to be worked out. But
yeah, we're still designing a lot of on the multi-user. Yeah, this is kind of the things we haven't yet figured out, but we won't be. Some of the things we've been actually trying to design is really making sure that your second account would be, for example, able to make a call by entering your SIM unlock again. And so what we can eventually think is that the second user wouldn't be able to access the network at all. Maybe locking back the SIM, and only going through Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi for internet connection. So basically cutting off totally the phone access to the second user. One more question. Yes.
So I have a question about the Omni installer. You said you're going to be able to install not only the OmniROM, but Sierra, APT, Android. How do you plan on going about that? Is there pull the links nightly, or is it up to?
So we'll have actually an open API, or maybe linked to xda-developers. So basically, you'll be able to say, here's my download link, here's my build, it's a nightly, or it's a release candidate, or it's a stable. You basically fill in the information, and it just appears in the app as you fill it. So, thank you.